guest is Dr. Judy Ann Mumford.
Balance between setting boundaries, strictness and control, and love.
Share the gospel clear and strong. Stand for, claim your heritage of truth.
Welcome to Heritage of Truth. Today my guest is Dr. Judy Ann Mumford. She is the author of Beyond Rubber Duckies, Preparing Children for the Voyage of Life. And I really like this book. So thank you for being our guest today.
Thank you for having me.
Why don't you tell people what your background is? You're a PhD in
Human Development and Family Studies. I've had just wonderful opportunities. I've been very, very blessed. I started out, believe it or not, as a math major. When I look back, I don't know what that was about, at a secular university. And then I went to a Christian institution and graduated in Christian education.
Oh, okay.
And that set me on my life's passion and trajectory, because immediately I thought, what more wonderful thing could we be involved in than children's well-being and coming alongside their parents and helping them. So I had the opportunities then to get a bachelor's degree in child study and then master's and doctorates in human development and family studies. But my focus has always been, what's the best for children and how can we help parents and particularly help them in the things that matter for eternity.
Absolutely. That's wonderful. So why did you write this particular book?
I wrote this book just out of passion, out of concern. I feel like the parents today need to be validated, supported, encouraged, and trained. They need for us to come alongside. It is a tough job, and we need to be there for them. We need to say, yes, you're right. You're not imagining things. This is tough. Mm-hmm. And things have gotten so much tougher. It's just the societal standards have just plummeted, moral values, and we're swimming upstream as parents. What we're trying to work for, the world is working against.
Absolutely.
So I just have a real heart for parents and those that care about children.
Mm-hmm. Well, your book is unique in a lot of ways. So how would you say that it is different from others?
My background has allowed me to combine the education that I've had in the Christian arena as well as in the secular arena. I have not provided steps to the perfect child. Follow these steps, any kind of these are the ultimate rules, and if you do this, you're going to be successful as a parent. And your child is going to walk away smiling. That's too simplistic for me. What I've done is taken the principles that I know to be true, the biblical principles, and with them I've interwoven my education and experience and then my own research with troubled teens.
Okay, tell us about that research.
I was able to go to a facility, a residential facility for teens who had made such poor choices that they were living away from their families. So, there's a lot of heartache. I forgot to check my mother's heart when I went into these wonderful one-on-one sessions with these teens. It was heartbreaking. But what I learned from them were that there were certain themes that emerged as I talked with them, certain things that were present or absent in the home. And I thought, how do we rewind this to the early years and even into pre-adolescence? Again, not that there are any guarantees. If we do this is, the results are going to be as we want, because every child makes his or her own choices. It's like if we put these into part of our lives, and this from early childhood on, we're putting these children in the best possible situation to make good choices during the teen years and beyond.
Oh, that's good. Well, one of the things I think is the toughest is discipline, especially when you have a strong-willed child. I remember when our daughter was little and I tried putting her in timeout. She was a very social little thing. And when I put her in timeout, it was like devastating for her. But then within maybe the second or third time I put her in timeout, she was there, and I listened and I thought, what's going on? And she was in the corner drawing pictures in her mind. You know, it was all imaginary pictures with her finger on the wall and telling herself a story.
That's right.
So she was fine.
I relate to that so completely because one of our sons, sending him to his room was absolutely pointless because he still had himself, and that's all he needed to have a good time. So it's the same sort of thing. I do a seminar called A Line in the Sand, and I address this in my book as well. The hardest part of discipline, I think, is to really feel like we do have the authority. Particularly today's parents kind of feel like, well, I want to be their friend, you know, but they're the authority figure. Our children don't need us to be their friends. If that turns out that way, and it usually does, fantastic, but that's not our role. And so it's to draw the line in the sand. I tell parents that in case they forget, just put a sign on your refrigerator. I am the adult, he or she is the child.
Yeah.
So that you are clear on that. The other thing that I think is so important is children are growing up in a gray world. There are no moral absolutes anymore. There's no black and white. And this is really unfortunate. Our children desperately, desperately need boundaries. If you don't mind, I just want to give you a little example from my research.
That would be great.
A young teenager named Mike. Of course, that's not his real name, but just delightful. And he talked to me about some of the problems he had gotten into when he was at home. And he said, I grew marijuana in my room. And as he was talking, I could tell his parents knew. And I said, and he said, my parents knew about it. He said, you'd have thought they'd have called the police or something. I just wish they had. Over and over, they're crying for boundaries. At the same time, they're saying, hey, I want to be my own person. Don't bug me. I'm 14 or whatever. I can make my own decisions. They are crying for boundaries.
Yeah, definitely. Yeah, my daughter kind of indicated that too at one point where I said, well, I'm going to tell you what I think, but then you're on your own. It's like, no, that's too scary.
Yes, good, that's right.
You have some recommendations in here. You were talking about not using essentials like food. You know, there's a lot of parents will say, well, if you don't eat that spinach or whatever, you know, you're not going to leave the table. And that was especially prevalent, I think, when I was a child, you know,
Yes.
that era. But some parents still try to do that, you know, that you need to finish this is the food that we've served today and you need to finish it. But then with a strong-willed child, they may never eat it. And so you in here say, I believe when it becomes clear that your child, rather than you, has assumed a dominant position in a battle of the wills, it is best to simply say, I have changed my mind. Instead of you're not getting anything else to eat until you have eaten what's on your plate, I have decided that you will not be allowed to, and then give another consequence that the child has no control over.
Yes.
I thought that was brilliant. Absolutely brilliant. So.
Yes, and as so much of this book, it comes out of my experience and the experiences of others. A panicky young mother calls and says, what am I going to do? My 3-year-old, I told him he couldn't have anything else to eat until he ate what is on his plate. And it's the next day, and now she's just contemplating. You know, she said, I can't give in to him because then he's going to have the upper hand. And she was contemplating hiding food so that he could find it, but it wasn't like she had really given it to him. So we talked through that. And I just recommend don't use things like that because you never know where it's going to go.
So what do you think is the single biggest challenge of parents today?
You know, one of the things that I think just is, we've alluded to it before, but it's the societal standards. But along with that, we have given children the sense that they're the center of the universe and that they are in charge. The sense of entitlement is just huge. And I think that for some reason we're not as comfortable as previous generations with saying, hey, I'm the adult here. And I think that is a huge challenge. is just to make sure that our children understand in terms of ultimate goals, which is, I guess that is the ultimate challenge that we have. It's internalization of their faith.
Yes.
We can pass along our beliefs and behaviors, transmit that to them. They must internalize those, and that's the ultimate goal.
Right. And I think that's really important for people to understand that the Christian faith is the most logical faith there is. There are resources to help them teach their children apologetics, which is, how to defend their faith, so that when they are in a classroom, they're not going to be duped into believing things that the teacher says because that's what is in the textbook, because the textbooks are being controlled by unbelievers.
That's right.
Yeah. I think that's really important what you were saying. So how can, when you've worked with all these teens and you've seen a lot of broken hearts and that kind of thing, but a lot of us, because of, as you said, the bad choices, what do you think leads them to make these bad choices?
Back in the 70s, the psychologist David Elkind coined the phrase personal fable, and it has to do with teenagers thinking nothing bad is going to happen to me.
Oh.
So that is part of what's going on here, and we are all, when we are born, we're functioning from the brainstem. That's the fight or flight, the basic instincts. And either we withdraw or we're aggressive. And our goal as we lead children is to get them up to the limbic system. And that's where, like in preschool, we say, use your words. Don't kick, bite, and hit. Use your words. But ultimately, we want children to function, and we all need to function from the prefrontal cortex. That's the part of our brain where moral, rational decisions take place. So that's where we want them to land. Well, adolescents, this is not necessarily good news, but adolescents sometimes are very, very slow to mature. That's the last part of their brain that matures. And young men can be 26 years old until that part of their brain is fully matured.
Really?
Yes.
Oh, I had no idea.
So they are still not really functioning at the level we would want them to. And what I say to parents, does this mean, oh, well, his brain isn't fully matured, I can't really do much about this? It's just the opposite. You look at them as the CEO of the brain has stepped out. I need to step in.
Right. How would you have them step in those cases?
Yes. What we need to do is it needs to be in a context of love. We need to earn the right to be heard. There have been many studies about parenting types, and over and over and over, research, and I believe biblical truths come down on the side of a balance between setting boundaries, strictness and control, and love and caring. And that is critically important. Because if we are simply this hard-nosed authoritarian, because I said so, our children are just going to want to wiggle out from underneath that. They're going to want to escape. And if we're liberal and we just say, permissive, whatever, do whatever you want, then we really are not stepping up to the plate as parents.
And they're going to be insecure.
Very, very insecure. They don't have the cognitive or emotional faculties to control their own lives.
And probably the spiritual maturity.
Absolutely not.
So, well, I hate to end this, but we are out of time. But where can people find you online? Do you have a website?
Yes, we are beyondrubberduckies.com.
I love the name of this book. So you cover all ages in here, right? Parenting of all ages.
That is correct. It is geared primarily for persons involved with children up through age 10 to 12.
Okay.
But the principles are for any age, and it's not just for parents. It's for grandparents, friends, neighbors, teachers, anyone who cares about children.
Okay. Beyond Rubber Duckies by Dr. Judy Mumford. Thank you so much for being our guest.
Thank you. It's been a pleasure.